Welcome to Sekou Style. This is your man Sekou Kesley. As you already know, let's do this. Today we're gonna be talking about Niger and the African countries' response to the coup d'etat in Niger, and also we're gonna analyze, the global politics surrounding the coup in Niger, and we're gonna make recommendations. Are you ready for that? All right, let's get down into it. So, let's talk about the coup. As we all know, first, let's go into where is Niger? Niger is located in West Africa. It's a landlocked country. Please go Google it. You'll find more about it. And I'm not here to tell you all the demography and all the other stuff. You could check that on your own. But Niger is a West African country, francophone, meaning it was colonized by the French. And it's bordering Nigeria, Burkina Faso, Mali, and is in the Sahel region of Africa, which is the desert region, also near Chad and other countries there. Now, the coup d'etat, the coup leaders, the army colonel, who have decided to take over the government, the democratically elected president, President Bazoum, Mohamed Bazoum, that's his name. And the coup leaders one of their main concern or one of their main reason for taking over the country is that they claim instability. And this is a key word that I want for you to keep in mind. In Burkina Faso, we hear about instability. In Mali, we hear about instability. The only country that we didn't hear much about, well, even in Guinea, they talk about instability, but it wasn't as the focal point. It was more like because of political maneuvering of Alpha Conde, there was instability in Guinea. Now, because I don't want to talk about Niger in isolation. I want to be able to bring all these together to try to make sense out of it. Now, all these countries, especially there are 6 countries in Africa right now that are under military rules. And many of these countries, when you look at it, it's pretty much dividing Africa from sub-Saharan Africa to the North Africa. It's really the Sahel region, almost like these countries, when you connect them, it kind of divide the continent. Now, let's think about that for a minute, right? Let's really let that sink in visually. Now, when it comes to Niger, what makes Niger very interesting is that, when the coup leaders are talking about instability, and you start wondering, maybe the government didn't have the necessary support and manpower to fight against the insurgents, the terrorists who are terrorizing the people of Niger and in the region. You say maybe the government doesn't have that support, but that is not the case. Actually, when you really look at Niger, because it was one of the countries in the region that has tremendous support, is democratically elected president, and had tremendous support from France, the former colony. They had military bases in Niger. The United States had their drone base in Niger to survey the entire Sahara and the Sahel region, and into Burkina and Mali and all these other places that there are terrorist activity. So you start wondering, but with all this support, why the country cannot defeat the insurgents? They cannot defeat the terrorists, and why the government is not taking necessary steps to crush these insurgents? Why the military? Who is training the military and what equipment are they giving these military? And these are things that I want for us to start thinking about, because it's easy to fall into the propaganda. We need to ask the real questions, right? And as you ask these questions, you need to think, who is supporting Niger? The United States is there. Obviously, if the United States has a military base, or at least their drone base, that means the United States is there supporting Niger. The French government has French army on the ground. The French interest is there, because obviously Niger also is a natural rich country that has uranium and other natural resources that the French need and the US and everybody needs from them, right? So the United States is there, the French are there, the Germans are there, EU is there. So with all these Western countries being there, I'm putting them under the Western umbrella, being there, why the government cannot, with the military and financial support, cannot defeat these terrorists who are terrorizing the region and the country? And why the country, the military leadership cannot work with these people and work with their legitimately selected or appointed government to crush, the insurgents? That is the key question that I want for us when we start analyzing this, to start thinking about. Those are some of the key questions we need to really analyze. And it's easy to fall into the weeds of things, but let's dive a little bit deeper than just what we see on the news or what we want to assume things are. Now, who trained these military? The United States, the French government, and other Western allies are the ones who usually train these military who are taking over as coup leaders. You could, from Mali to Guinea to Burkina Faso to Niger now, you will notice there's a same pattern. Most of the military or the military leaders who are part of the coup or the coup leaders were trained by the Americans, by the French, by their special forces who are on the ground. And yet, one of the even most interesting things, as soon as the coup happened, these military leaders start asking for the Russian to come in to support. Despite getting the training from the United States and her allies or the Westerners, they asked for Wagner Group, the Russian mercenaries, or the Russian Putin to support them. Why is that happening? Are these coup leaders playing with the people? Or are they playing themselves in trying to create this anti-West sentiment so that they could be able to steal the power that they have gained from the West? Because when the West, because of the West, that most of these coup leaders became the military brag that they are. They're well trained because of the support of the West. So it's pretty much they are made by the West, and yet they are taking coup to betray the West, to claim that they want to fight these terrorists. That despite the West being there, they couldn't fight these terrorists. Now, some people will say, oh, no, because the West is the one that is using the democratically elected president to suppress these military leaders to not fight the terrorists effectively so that the West could stay within the region. So you see that there are two things going on there. When you ask the question, there's answers, right? Now, let me repeat that again. The West could be, I'm saying could be, because even the Niger coup leaders, they made a mention of that, saying that the West uses their influence to put pressure on the democratically elected leaders, or leader of Niger in this instance, to calm them down when they are trying to fight hard against the insurgents. Hence, the West is in bed with the insurgency, or at least to some extent is at their benefit for these insurgents or these terrorists to remain in the region to destabilize the region. That's why some of the coup leaders are claiming. So that's why when they come in, they say, yes, despite the West giving all the training, but they're training us to tie our hands behind our back so we are not able to fight like the way we should fight these people. So we want the Russian to come in so that they will help us fight and crush these people. Because we know how to do it, but the West not giving us all the backing because we believe that the West, for whatever reason, although they claim to be supporting us to crush these people, that they are doing something, there's a politic, they are being hypocritical, they are not giving us all the necessary tools or all the necessary support to crush these stuff. Meaning now as a result of, this little maneuvering, there are consistent attacks, and there are, these insurgents are always, terrorizing their people, hence their instability, and the military feel powerless, so they have to take out their, legitimately elected government for them now to, be the leaders and fight against these insurgents. That's really the stuff going on. Broadly, Niger, they're making the same argument. Burkina Faso makes similar argument. Mali was a similar thing. Guinea was a little bit different. But let's come back to that argument again and try to analyze it. Now, what we could get out of that argument is that yes, democratic leaders are being exploited by the West to do their bidding. However, we shouldn't forget that the military leaders will end up being exploited by the West and the East. Because these military leaders, when they come in, they want to secure their power. Keep in mind, it's a power game. Local, I'm talking on the local level. They will want to secure their power. They want to create an enemy. The West become part of their enemy. Although the West want to give them the training through the democratic elected leaders. But the West will become their enemy because now they want to secure that power, so they will go to the East, China or Russia. Russia will come and give them support to try to fight the so-called instability, right? But they will garner the people's support. So but they will be exploited again because there's nothing free. There's no free lunch in the international politics. Russia wants something. China wants something. Everybody gonna get what they want. The question is, what does African leaders want? What are some of the key tangible things that the African leaders are looking for? Is it peace? Is it the only way that we could sustain peace is by killing our brothers and sisters, is by going to war, is by labeling each other as terrorists and fighting each other? Is that the end result? Again, I want to do this discussion not only about Niger, but about the broader sentiment in the region of West Africa and the Central Africa and the Great Lake region generally, Sub-Saharan Africa. What do we want? Right? Moving on. Now, we know that the coup has happened. And we know that, the military leadership is now clinging to power in Niger. And they have been given an ultimatum by the West African the West African community to either reinstill the leader or there will be military action, there will be consequences. And I believe that the West African community, which is the ECOWAS, have given them up to Sunday, today, or the weekend, to make up their mind. And they would take further military action if these people don't leave power. Now, that begs for a couple of reasons, a couple of things. Can we afford Africans going to go kill Africans because of so-called democracy? Or the democratic leaders has been put out of power, so the West African leaders have to get together and go kill other Africans? And there will definitely be casualties, there will definitely be waste of resources, waste of money, taking us back 3, 4, 5 years. Can we afford that? Is that the only solution that the West African community, the ECOWAS leadership could have come out with? And most of these ECOWAS leaders are technically, doing this to protect themselves in their own little power because, again, what is making the military leaders taking over? Because you're not doing what the people want for you to do. And yet you have the audacity to now threatening countries where the people are actually supporting their militaries for taking over, and you want to send forces in. Is that the best solution? To squander the natural resources of the little that you have and bring more instability in the region as a whole? Now, before we even go further into this analysis, I want for all of us to sit down and think about how we got here. Because again, I mentioned at the beginning of the video, we talk about what? Instability, instability, and instability. Now, what led to instability in the region? We tend to forget very quickly. 2011, Obama, the West, collective West, and Africa. I don't even want to blame just Obama. And Africa, and even Russia, because Russia had a veto power and China had a veto power, they didn't do much. They all sat down at the UN General Assembly and also at the Security Council. They allowed a resolution to go kick out Muammar Gaddafi. Gaddafi wasn't an angel. We all know that. But he was a strong man who worked so hard to make sure that entire region was secure. He worked diligently to make sure that, there was security in the entire region, because Libya is situated right there, and all these countries that are falling right now in chaos were under a good control because Muammar Gaddafi was there and Libya was in good control to make sure that the neighboring country don't get to this level. But everybody sat down. The entire African Union sat down and make way for the West to go kill Muammar Gaddafi like a little rat in Libya. Today we are where we are. So when you see the insecurity or instability around all that region, that's the genesis of it. That instability that we all talk about. The instability that the coup leaders keep referring to. When you look at how the jihadists, all the Madrid, or the Al-Qaeda in the Sahel, all these people, where they're getting their weapon from, where they got their weapon from. Libya, when Libya collapsed, because Muammar Gaddafi had a lot of weapons. Libya as a state was strong, they had a military. But the West overpowered them, and these weapons went into these countries. It was not controlled, the borders were not controlled. So the terrorists and all these other people took these weapons, went to Mali. We saw the war in Mali. Went to the Niger region. We're seeing what's going on right now, this instability. They went to Chad. We're seeing that Central African Republic. All these weapons could be traced. Most of them could be traced back to Libya. Because we destabilized Libya, the West, especially, and the whole world really. Even Africa was involved because our African leaders don't think for themselves. They allowed the West to convince them to go attack their own brother, Gaddafi. When that happens, the whole place is destabilized. Now, we are seeing those results today. We are seeing 6 African countries all under military rule. Because of the instability that started then, it's still happening now. Now, that's one of the major reasons that is instability, and all the coup leaders keep referring to this instability. Now the French, everybody now in this region trying to stabilize the region, but they cannot. The American in Burkina Faso, the American and the French in Mali, the whole the African Union and mission went to Mali. They couldn't stabilize the region. Because what happened before. Now, let's move on to I wanted to bring that, that little sense of things that, we really, as Africans, we need to start thinking about. Now, from a global perspective, we need to look at how Russia has successfully placed herself in the way of, we are the savior of Africa. All these coup leaders want us because of the propaganda. Because Russia has little or nothing to do with almost all these countries that went through coup. If anything, they only came to Mali. The only place that you could prove that, yes, Russia has gotten involved and do some fight, Mali and the Central African Republic. The Wagner forces has been there in those places. But when it comes to Niger, we had the French, we had the American, and even in Mali, we had the African forces, we had the UN, we have, all these, we had the French and all these people there. So Russia cannot really boast of a lot in those places to say that, okay, this is, but again, they successfully managed to put their propaganda machine to work. That other Africans now, Niger, Burkina Faso, everybody want Russia. Because what is being sold to the Africans is that Russia, when Russia comes in, we don't play around. We're gonna make sure we get rid of the terrorists. We're gonna make sure we do X, Y, and Z. But Russia cannot even defeat Ukraine right there in their own backyard. Right now, Moscow, as we speak, Moscow get attacked every other day, right? And they get, so what I'm trying to say essentially is this, and which is going to lead me to the final point of this discussion, is that Africa has found herself in the middle of this global fight for power. African leaders need to start waking up, because if they don't wake up, they're going to get played even more. Africa, we cannot afford to have wars everywhere right now. The ECOWAS threatening Niger military juntas. What do you have ECOWAS to send to go fight the military junta in Niger? I don't think you have the money. You don't have the manpower. You don't have the capacity. You might have the capacity, but it might be like Nigeria. And Nigeria has her own problem that they could barely fix. Boko Haram and all these other terrorist groups are still wandering around, lingering around Nigeria. They could barely fix it. How are you going to just wake up and go fight in another place? Does the Nigerian government or the soldiers have the morale, the zeal would be there to go fight other African countries because there was a military coup d'etat? Is Nigeria any stranger to any coup d'etat? I'm bringing this to Nigeria because Nigeria is the giant of Africa, and Nigeria would be the leading force into this. But the question is, does Nigeria have the ECOWAS? Like the ECOWAS used to be very strong and powerful, but does the African, the West African community have what it takes to quickly mobilize the necessary military forces needed to go attack Niger? And would it be a fair thing to do? So these are some of the things that I want for Africa to start taking out of this. Now, and it's very simplistic also on the international level for us to just say, and Africans, especially if you listen to my video to this point, that means you really want to get something good out of this video. But it's very simplistic for us to just think that, without the West, Russia is not the best alternative. The best alternative is African really trying to figure out how to solve Africa's problem. Africa needs to think better and be able to say, this is an African problem, this is how we could solve it. We don't need Russia, we don't need the West. But what we need is Africans. We need good leadership in Africa. For all the democratically elected leaders who are afraid right now, peeing on themselves, you shouldn't be afraid if you're doing the right thing by your people. You shouldn't be afraid. It should be actually a time for you to make policies and encourage your citizenry to express themselves and be able to engage with your people. This is not time to be afraid. This is time for you to lead. People appointed or select you because they want leadership. You provide them with those leadership. Even your people will want for you to leave. Look at Paul Kagame in Rwanda. He has provided leadership. He could change the constitution at any time. People will want for him to stay. African leaders, you need to emulate better African leaders. People who are making good decisions in their countries. It's not a magic. The people need you. Africa needs you. So this is what it's going to take. I started with Niger, but it's bigger than Niger. Niger is just one piece of the puzzle. But especially sub-Saharan Africa, we could do better. And we must do better. The African leadership definitely has to do better. And today, that's my analysis really. This is beyond Niger. This is, yes, Niger is going through the coup d'etat right now, and African ECOWAS wants to go into, stop the coup and intervene, but the military intervention is nothing but a Western fighting for the West, as we have done before. We allowed the West to come and kill Gaddafi. We created instability. Now, if we take this fight again, we take the fight to Niger, fighting Nigerian, it will create more instability in the region, and you will see more coup d'etat instead of democratically elected leaders. So keep that in mind as you make your decision to engage with Niger and the coup leaders. Peace and love.